Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Patrick Liu, and I'm going to be your host for the Diabetes Survival Guide show. I'm the founder of the Diabetes Management Group, where I am a fitness and wellness coach for people with type 2 diabetes and prediabetes. And this show will be a way to share the phenomenal stories about people with all forms of diabetes, healthcare professionals who work with people with diabetes, health and wellness coaches who work with people in this population, and or caregivers and relatives with people with diabetes across the world. A little bit of a personal background for me as a show starter is I was diagnosed with prediabetes back in 2021 and made some modifications to my lifestyle and habits to successfully reverse it in 2022. However, that onset of me receiving prediabetes in 2021 triggered my memories of when my grandpa, who passed away when I was a sophomore in high school from kidney failure secondary to his type 2 diabetes, about the care that was misunderstood and not the greatest at that time. So I want to provide this show as a way to explore the different spectrums of diabetes and healthcare professionals sharing their tips of what they've seen helpful in working with folks with them, and then some things that weren't as helpful so that y'all can learn something. So thank you so much, and we'll get started with the disclaimers and the show.
Disclaimers. This show is not medical advice or a treatment plan and may contain sensitive and explicit content. It is intended for general education and demonstration purposes only. This content should not be used to self-diagnose or self-treat any health, medical, or physical conditions. Don't use this show to avoid going to your own healthcare professional or to replace the advice they give you. Consult with your healthcare provider before attempting anything you learned in this show. You agreed to identify and hold harmless the creators of this material for any and all losses, injury, or damages resulting from any and all claims that arise from your use or misuse of this show material. The creators and guests of this show make no representations about the accuracy or suitability of this content. Use these materials at your sole risk. Views and opinions are individual to the creators and guests of this show and do not represent any other opinions or entities and are not intended to offend anybody. We hope you enjoy the show. Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Diabetes Survival Guide show. Today, I'm joined by a super awesome and a super amazing guest, Ryan Crawford. So Ryan has not only understood the importance of investing in himself by checking out the research that's out there when he was diagnosed with diabetes, but also really looking in that mirror and saying, hey, something needs to change. And that changes myself so that I can set a positive example for myself and other people who are around there. He's done a phenomenal job in answering people's questions on different social media platforms, and he is really a huge pillar and is a rising star in the diabetes field. And I'm super excited to have him on here as a guest. So, Ryan, if you wouldn't mind telling us about yourself and your diagnosis story and anything else that I haven't shared yet, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Patrick. I'm excited to be on here. I've been seeing what you're doing and following you, and look forward to watching you continue to grow in this diabetes space. So yeah, name's Ryan Crawford. I'm a father of 2 kids, first and foremost. I love my kids to death. And I currently, as far as professionally, I work for FedEx in sales. My diagnosis story was about 2.5 years ago. And I kind of want to go back like a few months before. So this was right before COVID hit, my 40th birthday. So I turned 40. And of course, for your 40th birthday, for any birthday, you want to go get your blood work, get your cholesterol, triglycerides. And at that time, I had no idea what an A1C was. Diabetes never was on my radar, just no clue. So December of 2019, I got the blood work done. Everything came back. Everything was good. Triglycerides, cholesterol. A1C, I believe, was 5.6. So it was teetering on the pre-diabetic, which I had to go back after the time to find that out. But doctor didn't say a word to me, which we'll talk about that, I'm sure, later. So fast forward January, February, I'm starting to notice I'm waking up in the middle of the night, having to go to the bathroom, not sleeping that well. Again, this wasn't on my radar, so didn't think anything of it. I was like, maybe this is just how it is getting older. And then March of 2020, and this is after COVID had hit, I took the kids down to Panama City, Florida for their spring break. And I remember vividly every exit, or it was every other exit, because we were driving down 75 straight from Ohio down to Panama City. I was stopping to have to go to the bathroom. I mean, and at the time it was annoying. I was like, this is just super annoying. I must have a UTI. And so needless to say, the trip down there was miserable for me. I made it good for the kids because I just wanted them to enjoy their vacation, and I just powered through. But it was the same thing every night, just going to the bathroom. And I was thirsty. And what was crazy, I remember being on the beach and going to the bathroom, and then I get a pina colada, which is all sugar. And I just chug that and then go to the bathroom. And it was just a repetitive cycle. And again, so I thought I had a UTI and go to the pharmacy to get Uzo or Azo. It's for UTIs. And I don't know if it was a placebo effect. Like maybe I thought it helped a little bit. And I was like, oh, when I get back home, I'm going to go to the doctor, get an antibiotic, and then just be on my way. So get back first thing, get an appointment with my primary care. And I told him, I said, hey, I think I got a UTI. Can you please prescribe me an antibiotic? Did the urinalysis. He comes back in the room and he says, I got some good news and I got some bad news. And he says, the good news is you don't have a UTI. The bad news is you're spilling sugar in your urine. My heart dropped. I said, what do you mean? What do you mean I'm spilling? He's like, you're diabetic. And just, first of all, the way he conveyed the message was so unprofessional, but I digress. I was just shocked and just scared, had no idea what to do, and wasn't given any guidance. It was like, okay, just make sure you get yourself a glucometer. I want you to test your blood sugar in the morning and do before you eat and a 2-hour postprandial after you eat. So that was the only guidance I was given. I go home, and then that's when just Google, YouTube, research, I just started researching. And I remember at the time, I had to get blood work done. So if we go back to December, 3 months prior, everything's fine, 5.6 A1C. 3 months later, A1C of 11.1.
Jeez.
So it more than doubled, or almost doubled. And so for those of you that are pre-diabetic, don't take this lightly because it hits like a freight train and there's no going back. So and this just shows you your A1C could double within a few months because just once it happens. So I do all the research. It gets to the point where I can't sleep. I went 3 months without sleeping.
Oof.
I'm not lying. 3 months. I'd be on one side. I turn over to the other all night for 3 months. So I'm begging the doctor. I'm like, hey, something else is going on. And I was like, I'm not sleeping. So I start looking at thyroid. I start thinking about testosterone, just all these things that could be attributed to sleep. And I demand a lot of these tests. And then also my C-peptide. So for those of you that don't know, your C-peptide is how much insulin your pancreas is producing. And then also antibodies, your GAD antibodies. You've got 6 different antibody tests to find out if you're what's called LADA, latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. So I request all these tests. And this is why you've got to be a hard advocate for yourself, because my doctor was saying, oh, you don't need these. This just is what it is. You're type 2. That's it. And so I kept demanding, and you got to stay on your doctor. It's your health. Everything came back. My thyroid was completely out of whack. And mind you, I've never had thyroid problems my whole life. My testosterone plummeted. My GAD antibodies were through the roof.
Oof.
So at this point, of course, he apologized. He said, I'm sorry. And he's like, you need to see an endocrinologist. And so I go to an endocrinologist. In between all this is when I'm doing all my research, and with some supplementation. I don't know if the supplementation is what really fixed my thyroid and my testosterone, or if it was just my body went through so much at one time and it just leveled itself out. But ever since when I started supplementing my D3 and K2 and zinc, because zinc is a really good precursor for testosterone for men, those normalized, thank God. Because it got to the point where they were going to do the radioactive iodine and zap my thyroid.
Ooh, yeah.
So that's huge. That got fixed. And when they looked at the antibodies, they said, okay, yeah, you've got an immune form of diabetes called LADA, latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. So what's happening is my pancreas is being attacked. My immune system's attacking the beta cells in my pancreas. And I've actually had a recent C-peptide where it's done. My honeymoon is over, so I'm insulin dependent. I was going to say, it's kind of got the unique perspective of both because I was overweight, in which that certainly didn't help things and absolutely made me insulin resistant. I was very insulin resistant, and now I'm very insulin sensitive. But that was the long-winded story.
Yep.
Going into what happened and just the roller coaster. And I know there's so many out there like us and that people that are watching your podcast that are just scared. It's scared to death. I remember how scared and just not having anybody to confide in and just to, because you might have a good relationship with your doctor, but you're just a number. You're a number. They need to churn and burn. You got to get through the patients and prescribe metformin or whatever medication for you and then get you on your way. That's a big thing, being an advocate for yourself when you are in there with your doctor, and especially when you get diagnosed. But yeah, so that was my diagnosis story. And it was, a roller coaster thinking, hey, and so also with the thing I developed, what's called
Raynaud's?
It's another autoimmune. So if it's cold outside in the winter, I'll have fingers that will turn white. It's crazy how just all this stuff happened. And then what we're thinking initiated it because for LADA, which unfortunately I think we're going to see a lot more of, because it can be triggered by infections and also major stressful events. And I got COVID in January, so the month before all this started happening. I don't know if that could have done something. And then also I was going through a very stressful divorce. So the two of those, who knows? I think it was inevitable no matter what, but I think I definitely expedited the process by being overweight. And certainly, like I said before, it's made myself really insulin resistant.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story too. And definitely a huge roller coaster of a ride, especially with COVID and then the spring break with your kiddos and all the different factors that are going into it, and even factoring in the situation where the doctor was, you don't need to worry about it, and brushing it off. And I think it's awesome that you decided to advocate for yourself and stand up for yourself, saying, hey, like, I want to get to the root cause of this and figure out what's going on. And it got to the point where even the doctor was astonished by it, and he owned up to trying to brush things off to being like, okay, it actually was more serious, and supporting you there. So I think that's great that you were able to take full action and really wanting to figure out how you can best serve and support yourself, and so that you could be able to serve and support your kids, which is great. And I guess another thing I want to ask too is, what has been your greatest success in managing your diabetes, aside from advocating for yourself and for hitting it in the gym and being able to lose some of that weight? Because for those who saw the cover picture, you'll see the before and after picture of how Ryan got shredded.
So one word: discipline. I think when you get a diagnosis of a chronic illness, you have two choices. You can be a victim, or you can fight like hell. And it just wasn't an option. And being a father, it was just, I had to work my butt off. And so going back to the perspective of both. So for the first year, I didn't eat a carb. Now, from maybe just some of the carbs and broccoli and some vegetables, but I was scared to death if I did. And in some instances where I did, there's a few, my sugar would skyrocket. And the amount I would eat, and then I would have to do 50 push-ups, and then I'd go run to get my sugar to go down. And I did that for a year. It was exhausting. I was down to 149 pounds. I was skin and bones. And I kept this from my kids for a year. They had no idea. I think they knew something was up, but that's the other thing that I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate with, is you don't want to tell people, you keep it secret for a while, which it's understandable at the beginning, but there's a lot of your family, friends, the support systems around you. Don't be afraid. My kids recently going through a divorce and everything. I didn't want to put more on them, but discipline's the big thing. There's no negotiation with myself. I'm in the gym 6 times a week. Food is our fuel. You got to eat healthy and something that you can be consistent with. Not a lot of these fad diets and things that it's a yo-yo. You have to have the mindset. And so I have the mindset of, this is my lifestyle. This isn't temporary. This is my lifestyle for the rest of my life. And I'm okay with that. And I feel better. I'm in better shape now than I was in high school. And just on a side note, this past fall, even after I was diagnosed with diabetes, I fought in an amateur boxing. I've had 3 amateur fights. So it's just for everybody out there, you can do what you want. Don't let this hold you back. You're capable of a lot of things, but it does take a while to get your body right and get on the right course, but will happen. But it's discipline, Patrick, for sure.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing. And I'm sure everyone can understand and empathize that, hey, if we can take that one step forward each day, have that consistency, eventually that consistency will breed into amazing things that one can not even imagine or realize, of them being able to get to the point where they're so healthy, and so healthy to the point where they can inspire those around them to make some smaller choices and have that positive ripple effect. So thank you so much for sharing that. And
yeah, and what will keep you going is as you start to see results too. And then I would start to see my body transform, but also my blood work. So my last A1C is 4.9.
nice.
So it's just how far I've come, and I've sustained 4.9 for a year now. So I can do this. I know how to do it. And that's just seeing your numbers better, seeing the changes in your body, of course, is going to help you mentally. It's just a snowball effect, and you just got to get going. And like you said, just consistent every day, just little baby steps.
And for every small baby step, celebrate the hell out of those wins.
Yes.
Saturate your mindset with all that positivity.
100%.
All right. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast. And before we continue with the rest of this show, I wanted to let y'all know, please feel free to give this podcast a 5-star rating if you like it. Share it with other folks that you think could be beneficial for. And if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe and follow to the Diabetes Management Group for awesome tips to manage your type 2 diabetes or prediabetes. And let's get back to the show. So the next thing I want to ask is, what has been the hardest moment since your diagnosis, and what did you learn from it?
So by far the hardest was not sleeping for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like, I am not exaggerating. It was the worst. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Sleep is essential, and I'm sure all you know how sleep is essential to your blood sugar. That's a crucial component: diet, exercise, sleep. And that's one I was missing out on completely. I had the diet, I had the exercise, but the sleep, and I was still exercising even on 0 sleep. And I was still working, didn't miss a day of work, which was hard. It was just, I was in zombie land. So I was at rock bottom. And you get in absolutes when you get diagnosed, and it's a chronic disease. It's not going to go away. So you get in this hopelessness. This is how it's going to be forever. Why try? So at that point, I thought I was never going to sleep again. I was like, I'm never going to sleep again. This is just the way it is. But I kept pushing. I didn't stop. I kept my exercise. I kept the diet going, and just having faith that hopefully this will change. And then one day I slept for 5 hours, and then it got better and better. But I think that's one thing that I guarantee everybody has been through, where they just think this is the way it's going to be for the rest of life. And that's not true. You can make changes. And yeah, type 2, you could put this in remission 100%. 100% you can control with diet and exercise. And if you're type 1 LADA, insulin is a gift. And that's what's allowed me, along with diet and exercise, to have my A1C at 4.9. So you just can't think that this is going to be the way it's going to be for the rest of your life, because that's not true. And that's a limiting mindset, and you got to have more growth and optimistic mindset for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, and having that optimistic mindset and making those small changes so one is able to sleep. Very insightful.
Yes. Oh God, I'm so happy I can sleep. My sleep still sucks. I won't lie about that. But if I get 6 hours, I'm good to go.
There you go.
And I know sleep has and is a struggle for a lot of diabetics.
But definitely something that can be improved.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep, room for growth. So that's a good thing. Yeah. All right. The next thing I want to ask too is, how has your diagnosis changed your perspective on being a dad?
Everything. That's the main reason I'm so disciplined, is because of them. And to be completely honest, if I didn't have them when all that was going on and I was in some dark places, who knows what would have happened. But they are the driving force. I want to be there to walk my daughter down the aisle. I want to meet my grandkids. So I've got to stay as healthy as possible. And I'm very optimistic there is going to be a cure for diabetes. And I know I've been saying that for years, but the FDA is working on a stem cell treatment that is a beta cell transplant in pancreas. And right now it's going well. I know patients have to be on immune suppressants. Once those immune suppressants are taken away, that's a cure. So I just say stay as healthy as possible. One day there's going to be a cure, but the kids, they're everything. I want to see my grandkids. I want to see my kids get married, and so in order to do that, I got to take the best care I can.
Yeah, so impactful, and I'm sure everyone who's listening, watching, hearing, feeling everything that's going on with this can definitely empathize with you there on being able to see their kids achieve their potentials, and then also seeing their grandkiddos and being so happy and fulfilled with them being able to invest in themselves so that they can see the end result of it, and seeing the end result and even more results that come afterwards.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. I got a couple more questions and then we'll be on our way. If you were dropped down on a different part of the earth and you find out that there's a bunch of zombies everywhere, what would you say is your zombie apocalypse survival plan, Ryan?
Oh, head to the closest Walgreens and CVS, get all my diabetic supplies.
Yeah.
Within a 10-mile radius, I would go to each one. Got to get insulin, my needles, all that stuff. And then I would make it towards the coast. At least let's get towards the ocean so they can't come from that end. So at least we're over by the water. That would be it. I'd get all my diabetic supplies and then head towards probably the Atlantic.
Yeah. A bit some more warm water over there.
Yeah. I just hope for the best.
Yeah. All right, Ryan, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and I'm sure we'll probably have you on the show in the future again as a future guest, and who knows, maybe we'll have your kiddos on here to share their perspective.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. No, I appreciate it, Patrick. Again, I love what you're doing. I really appreciate you thinking of me and being on here. And yeah, I hope we can do this again in the future for sure.
Of course, lifelong friends and partners. And I'm sure the audience is wondering how they can reach and find out where you're at and what you're doing. So how can they reach out to you?
Yes. So I'm working on getting something put. So right now, the only way that people can contact me is through my personal Facebook page. But like we had discussed offline, I'm working on getting a Facebook page set up specifically for the content I want to post on diabetes. And then also I'm a personal trainer. I'll go back. So I got my personal training certification after I was diagnosed with diabetes, because that is what I want to do. I want to help as many diabetics, people with metabolic syndrome, overweight as possible, and lose the weight for good, back to the mental state. Hey, this is a lifestyle change. You're not going to do this yo-yo. And so I'm going to get that up. And then maybe after I do, I'd love to come back on so I could share.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that's the best way right now. It's just the personal Facebook.
All right.
And feel free if anybody has questions, or because I know, especially if you're in that boat where you're scared, just know that you're not going to fix this in a day. So you got to just chill. It took a long time for this to happen inside our bodies, and it's just going to take a while to try to calm down, and everything's going to be okay.
All right. Thank you so much for your insights and your words and for sharing your story. And thank you all so much for tuning in. If you wouldn't mind giving all the love and support to Ryan, and once his stuff is up and running, I'll be sure to update this episode with that contact info. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and make one small step to improve your life today. See y'all next week for the next episode.
Thanks so much, Patrick.
Yeah, no problem.